All right, welcome in. Happy Friday. One day until Texas takes on Kansas in a ranked matchup at DKR. It's the bi-weekly broadcast that understands the pride and tradition of the Texas football program will never be entrusted to the timid or the weak. It's the Eyes on Texas multicast, and our eyes are firmly on the Longhorns, sitting at number 3 in the country. Here comes number 24, Kansas, and we're going to talk about it and preview it with you. We are a product of the Republic of Football on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network. 13 podcasts from all the schools around the state, that network, but certainly ours is as well. The Eyes on Texas multicast, powered by our presenting partner at Grande Equipment, and we'll tell you about our other founding partners as well throughout the course of our 30 or 40 minutes to preview this game here on this Friday ahead of game day. I'm Aaron Hogan, morning show host here at the Horn in Austin, 25 years on morning radio here in the capital city. He is the senior writer at Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, formerly the Austin American Statesman, doing great work covering college football in the state of Texas. He is Mike Craven. Hello, Mike. How are you, my friend?
Doing pretty good. After we get done with this, going to get in the car, drive to Huntsville, go watch Sam Houston on Thursday night, and then be back in Austin for the game, Texas versus Kansas on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big day in the state. This is the biggest game. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about is if Texas wins this game, if Oklahoma wins, we will talk about the look-ahead threat for Texas. But if both teams win Saturday with home games, they're heavily favored in both. Texas with Kansas, Iowa State in Norman. Very likely that next week, my college game day will be at the Cotton Bowl, because if you look at the schedule for week 6, it's not littered with great games. This would be the best game. And gosh, think about the subplots of that. I mean, is it going to bring Brett Yormark in to talk, or are you going to bring Greg Sankey onto college game day to talk about the future? A lot of subplots there. But first things first, let's get you going with the Kansas Jayhawks. The multicast that keeps you on top of all things Texas football is available to follow us on Twitter as well. Remember, Eyes on Texas FB, the Instagram page there at Eyes on Texas Pod, now on Facebook as well at Eyes on Texas Podcast. And it's all brought to you by Grande Equipment, our founding partners. Wes Murray and his great team there. If you need heavy equipment, rentals, or purchases for any project of any size, get a hold of Grande. Their team been doing it 31 years. And once the relationship starts, when they earn your business, I promise you that. It's all about getting the project done on time, on budget. That equipment that you need, or whatever it might be, from any manufacturer. They're not locked in. They don't lock in to one. They can use Caterpillar or Komatsu or John Deere, whatever you need for your project. It'll be there, job site ready and ready to go every single time. They are the best. Locally owned, independent, but play in the big leagues in a big way at grandeequipment.com. All right, Mike, one day out thoughts on Texas, Kansas. The line is 16-17, whether that matters. Longhorns won this game handily last November. Second to last game of the year was 55-14. Texas rushed for, over 400 yards in that game, with Bijan Robinson having a huge day. What's in your mind will prevent that from being another one-sided score, or will it be a one-sided score in your mind, Texas, Kansas?
I think the thing that will prevent it would be Jalen Daniels, just his ability. He's healthy this year. He wasn't really healthy after that first start. Last year, after the first 5 or 6 games, kind of dealt with some nagging stuff the rest of the way. So I don't know if Texas saw kind of a full strength Kansas offense. Devin Neal, also a really good running back. So they're going to have to be locked in there defensively. But the advantage for Texas is the same one they had last year, and that's in the trenches. I think that's going to be the advantage they have over every team on the schedule the rest of the way out, even Oklahoma. That offensive line, that defensive line for Texas is tremendous. When they're playing at their best, they're the best in the Big 12 without question. So if they show up on Saturday with the same mindset they did last week against Baylor of just, we're going to physically dominate up front and let everything else work itself out, that should be the key to success for Texas in week 5 and week 9 and in week 13.
Yeah, taking care of business. I think we've seen it's been established for the first 4 games. Texas has the best lines of scrimmage in the Big 12. I mean, Oklahoma's probably second, and that's why they're the 2 highest ranked teams. But we know about the skill talent, the Jatavion Sanders problem that he creates. But let's start with Kansas here against the Texas defense. And that's going to be our matchup of Texas defense versus this dynamic Kansas offense, brought to you by Brain Vault and the Brain Vault technology. It's patented technology based on proven science that helps protect young athletes or athletes from concussions. It's Brain Vault used their technology in the past 8 years with roughly 100 NFL players. No concussions reported. There's now technology for a retail version for your young athlete, your team of young athletes in any collision sport, any contact sport. Learn more about it at brainvault.com. It's brainvault.com. More than just a mouthpiece, where you can learn your young athlete can play hard, but play safe with Brain Vault. All right, Mike, you just said it, lines of scrimmage. Let's start with the the Texas or this Kansas offense because it is good and it's
Yep.
fun to watch. When you watch Kansas, Lance Leipold has come in and done a tremendous job. Jalen Daniels was there when he got there, right? Les Miles recruited him, so that's at least one thing. But when he first got there, they only had like 40 or 45 scholarship players. The Les Miles left it in a real disarray, and they've really added. They've added pieces, and now Jalen Daniels is a veteran quarterback. He's one of the veteran quarterbacks in this conference. And the numbers that jump off the screen for their offense through 4 games, Mike, they average over 460 yards. They're scoring points in bunches, and they're number 1 in the nation in third down conversions, over 60% third down conversions, which means they're good on first down, they're good on second down. And it's odd, Texas fans, a lot of you out there grew up watching the old option football, right? Wishbone with Darrell Royal, option football. It's interesting how Lance Leipold's system does option football, but from the spread. Like they spread you out, and then there's your assignments and your gap soundness has to be really good against this team because they make you be disciplined on defense and not over pursue anything.
Yeah, and they also trick your eyes. That's kind of what they're trying to do. They're trying to outnumber sides, and they're trying to trick your eyes and make you just take that one false step, and then they have the advantage. They can get a lineman to be on that side of the deal. And so they're going to try to move Texas around. They're going to try to use motion, try to use misdirection, try to get Texas out of their gaps. And that's been one thing Texas has been great at this year is gap control defense. Like the guys are where they're supposed to be. They're not over pursuing. They're not trying to do too much. You can tell there's a lot of trust on that defense and that's understood with a third-year system with every single coach back on that side of the ball, so much experience. I think Kansas's option, especially early on in the game, is to kind of catch Texas unawares, put some stuff out there that maybe Texas haven't seen on film, do some stuff that's opposite of maybe what Texas has seen on film, break some tendencies. The script is going to be really important. If Texas can shut down Kansas early, I think Texas shuts down Kansas the rest of the way. If Kansas has success early, I think that's when it gets difficult for Texas.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's script. And Kansas is going to have something special. The tendency breakers, a healthy Jalen Daniels, Devin Neal's a really good quarterback. The kid Hinshaw, the running back's really good too. They also have their top receiver is a big guy out of DeSoto, Texas. He'd be their go-to guy. So, yeah, they have weapons, and they're better. But I think, as we've said, Texas is better. They beat them 55-14 last year. I don't think it will be that large because of a healthy Jalen Daniels and a year better Kansas. But Texas should be in the advantage. They're a 17-point favorite. And that defense for Texas, you said it, they've been so good. Jalen Ford named the Reese's Senior Bowl National Defensive Player of the Week after his performance against Baylor. He'll be important in this game. What other Texas defenders are you really keen on with this, this option offense and what they bring to you? Which guys are most important to make sure the Longhorns have a good game plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think up front it's going to be the usual suspects, right? Byron Murphy, Tavondre Sweat, Alfred Collins, even Vernon Broughton. If those guys can control 3 or 4 linemen at the interior, that allows Jalen Ford and David Benda to run around and make plays. I honestly think Texas is going to be fine against the run game for the most part. What I would worry about for Texas is the play action, kind of deep shots. You commit so many guys forward to stop the run game that all of a sudden Jaron Thompson and some of those safeties that have struggled in man-to-man are alone back there. Kansas has 4 wide receivers that have had catches for at least 47 yards or longer. They're averaging about 13 yards a reception. And so they're a big play passing offense. They're not going to throw the ball 50 times a game. They're not going to slice and dice you through precision in that way, but they are going to make you creep forward, and then bust you on the back end with some deep plays. That's going to be things that Texas has to worry about because so far, if we're going to nitpick the Texas defense, the one thing that they have struggled with a little bit is vertical passing game when they get stuck in man-to-man with those safeties.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. And Lawrence Arnold's the big receiver out of DeSoto that they have to deal with. And you're right, they want to create big plays. I'll be eager. Here's a little factoid. I did some digging, and so far this year, and we may have mentioned this on our Tuesday edition of the Eyes on Texas when we were reviewing the Baylor game, but Jalen Ford is the only Longhorn defensive player that's played more than 75% of the snaps so far this year. That tells you just how much they're rotating. Jalen's on the field almost all the time. He's the nucleus, the brain center of their defense. But they rotate everybody else. And I'll be interested because I agree with you 100% on the teams when you're trying to attack something on Texas. Right now, all you can really find is those safeties. And can you get Jaron Thompson in coverage? He's made some big plays, big pick against Alabama, pick 6 against Wyoming. But he's also gotten beaten on some plays too because of he's not the fastest guy. And if you can get him matched up on a speedster, it's going to be a problem. Michael Taft played quite a bit last week against Baylor. He made some really good plays coming up and covering the run, but he also got beat over the top Ryan Watts. I don't wonder, when you're trying to match up with really good athletes and quick athletes, if we see some of the younger guys sooner in this game, especially in that script. I mean, is Manny Muhammad, the freshman out of South Oak Cliff, on the field? What about Derek Williams, the Raptor, who's great in coverage? Rod Babers has told us in his deep dives on our morning show here in Austin that he's, among safeties, according to Pro Football Focus, among the best cover safeties out there, even as a freshman. And then Anthony Hill. You wonder if you see an Anthony Hill just because of his speed. You have to have someone kind of spying Jalen Daniels. Somebody can run him down and not let him get loose, because Jalen can throw it, but he also runs like a running back. So it's almost like they have three backs in the backfield. I wonder if we don't see some of the younger guys early. That's why we've seen so much use of those guys, because you're going to need them against a spread athletic team like this. But then that gets down to your point, Mike, of eye discipline and staying in your assignment and not over pursuing plays.
Yeah, I would imagine they use them kind of in certain situations. They get in the second or third and long. Maybe you see, some packages come in defense, kind of like the way we normally see in offense, right? Where it's like third and long, you send your 5 wide out there. I think defensively, they're deep and talented enough to do that. I think that's one of the things we talked about all offseason, is that they've created depth that they just haven't had in over a decade. You're starting to see those athletes, coaches always say by like game 4, game 5, those true freshmen are starting to figure it out. They get their sea legs a little bit. They understand the speed of the game. They're starting to understand film a little bit more and tendencies and what they're asked to do. And then that talent starts rising to the top. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see some of these young guys play more and more and more over the next, 5, 6, 7, week 8, just as they're starting to figure it out a little bit more. The coaches trust them a little bit more, and they know that their speed and just overall talent is going to rise them to the top.
Yeah, agree with that. And, interesting is Jalen Catalon, one of the big marquee transfer portal players. He's only played he hasn't even played 40% of the snaps so far this year. Sark said this week he's not on a pitch count, but I think they are wanting to keep him careful. But man, we've talked about, Mike, these 2 games can define this season. Into your bye week, you win both of these, this week and next, with Oklahoma looming. You're sitting in a catbird seat with a week off, 6 games to go, where you'll be heavily favored in all of them. And you kind of shift gears from, Big 12 championship aspirations to college football playoff aspirations at that point. But got to take care of business here. What do you think about Jalen Catalon? Could be because he's such a good run supporter coming up in this run game. I wonder if we see more Jalen today or on Saturday.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more Catalon as the conference plays going, as teams get more physical, as they get better. I just think he is on a pitch count. I think he's too good to keep off the field more. Some of it's been, the score and the ability to get him off the field, but you need him on the second half of the season. They know his history with injuries, and I'd imagine that even if they're not consciously doing it, they know that keeping him healthy for the back end of the schedule is important. I'm with you. If they can beat Kansas, they can beat Oklahoma. Now they have tiebreakers over 2 of probably the 4 other kind of contenders alongside with Kansas State and TCU. That's big, not only, in case you just lose one down the stretch for the Big 12, but also for the college football playoff. I think if you beat Alabama, if you beat Oklahoma, now 12-1 in a Big 12 championship almost secures you a spot in that college football playoff. It gives them a little bit of wiggle room, and it's hard. The last time somebody went 13-0 as a Big 12 member, I think was Texas in 2009, right? So it's not an easy slate to get through, even though the Big 12 isn't considered to be on par with the SEC and the Big 10. It's historically been tough to run the table all the way through. If you can stack up some quality wins, if you beat Alabama on the road, you beat a ranked Kansas team, you beat Oklahoma on a neutral site, all of a sudden you've given yourself a little buffer room to have the kind of that natural letdown game eventually.
Yeah, well, and if they get to, again, we're not looking ahead to Oklahoma. I promise you, Sark says they're not. They've got their eyes firmly focused on this team here. But you get to the bye week 6-0 with ranked wins over 3 ranked teams, including Alabama. You could be getting some first place votes in addition to being up in the top 3 in the country, because that's a very accomplished compared to what Michigan's done so far and beaten what Georgia has done. Florida State would be the only other team comparable at this point. So, yeah, that's what's out there for Texas right now. And it starts on the defensive side. You got to start with the Jayhawks and how you stop that defense. And that's our look at the Texas offense against that defense. Do you have a pick for defensive player of the week? Maybe the guy that needs to be valuable. I mean, I had Jalen Ford last week, and that hit. I'm going to go with Jalen Catalon. I think we're going to see him make some big plays in this game, both in coverage and coming up and making some plays. I think this is the game where he breaks out. Been kind of holding him back, and they may have some stuff for him, from the defensive side that Kansas hadn't seen yet.
I'll take David Binda. I really enjoy kind of his emergence as a fifth-year senior and the transfer portal era, and just kind of, a coaching change happened. It would have been very easy for him to either wash out on his own or get washed out by this coaching staff. I think it's really cool that they stuck with him, that he stuck with the program. I think Kansas is going to concentrate so much on blocking the interior of Texas and handling where Jalen Ford is, that's going to allow David Binda to use his athleticism, just go run and make plays. Maybe he ends up being a guy who's a spy on Daniels a few times, just with his athleticism. I think he's going to have a big game, and he needs to continue to do that. I think his emergence, kind of like Jalen Ford's last year next to Overshone, his emergence next to Jalen Ford has really unlocked this defense.
Agreed. All right, that's our look at the Texas defense against this dynamic Kansas offense. That was brought to you by Brainball. But that Brainball technology is also delivered by Dr. Greg Eckert. Look at my pearly white smile. Dr. Eckert restored my teeth. Did it a few weeks ago, and I absolutely love it. The confidence that comes with a restored smile. And look, if you need work with your mouth, whether it's a single tooth or multiple, you can do like you did with me with working with what you already have and going over top of those and becoming the support. But then they can do the permanently secure dental implants, which gives you a brand new smile in one day. You do all the planning ahead of it, then you're in there for one day. You're back out with the brand new smile. He's restored over 1,000 cases Dr. Eckert has here in Central Texas. Give him a call just for a consultation. You're the boss. You give you the information. You make informed decisions about your dental health care needs with Dr. Greg Eckert. Also the Brain Vault technology, 345-3166. That's 345-3166. Dr. Greg Eckert, Eckert with a U, Ueckert. All right, Craven, let's get into the other side of the ball. Texas offense against a Kansas defense that is improved. Part of last year was a complete domination, 55 points and over 400 yards rushing. Kansas's defense was the end of the year, second to last game, November. They were banged up, and Texas just steamrolled them. This team is relatively healthy. They went into the transfer portal to add bodies, and Sark talked about they rotate as many as 10 players on their defensive line now. They're not as talented as Texas, but they're deeper. And if you look in the top 25 in total defense in the country right now through 4 games, they're top 25. Actually a little higher than Texas at number 22.
Yeah, they're a little bit lower in scoring defense. I think they're around 60 in that metric, but some of that's just because the offense plays so fast, scores so many points. They're on the football field a lot. They've been ahead in games, so they've gotten backups in there and been able, or probably allowed more points than maybe the first unit would be. I'm with you. I mean, this is the best Kansas defense that I can remember. I can't. I mean, it's been a long time since Kansas had these many dudes, deep, talented, faster than normal. But I think the major difference is they're bigger than they used to be, and so that's going to give Texas some problems. I think we've talked about it. It feels like Texas is almost better against the big defensive lines. It's kind of the smaller, quicker guys that have given them trouble. Rice, Wyoming, compared to how they did against Baylor and Alabama to an extent, especially late in the game. And so Texas is going to have to figure that out. I don't know I think Kansas is going to do a lot of stunts and movement and try to confuse this offensive line because they know just head up, they can't do it. Last year, Texas had a really good game plan and it worked. And I'd imagine they're going to come in with the exact same one and see if Kansas has figured out a way to stop it.
Agreed. And our Texas offensive game plan against this improved Kansas defense brought to you by Carlos Carrion, our good buddy and partner, founding partner, TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. That's TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. If you're going to market for a refi, new home, buying a rental property, still a good time. Never a bad time to buy in Austin, Texas with these prices going up. It's not going to get any cheaper. Talk to Carlos. He'll be your roadmap to everything you need. He's online at TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. Don't forget TheTexasMortgageGuy.com. Our guy Carlos Carrion bringing you the offensive attack for the Longhorns. And I think it's fair to say Sark has been a little bit frustrated with his offense at home, right? It's hard to argue with what they've done on the road. Outside of a couple drops at Alabama, they were pretty dynamic for 4 quarters offensively there, ran up some big numbers. Baylor could have named the score at some point there, up to, put 28 on the board in the first half and win 38-6. But at home, they've almost kind of let their foot off the gas. And you can credit Rice's defense and Wyoming's defense for sure. Same time, Longhorns have to bring that energy. I think the number that stands out to me is, again, on the road in those hostile environments. And you were at Waco. You saw how frenzied it was. But Alabama obviously was Alabama. they didn't have any pre-snap penalties in both games. The one they had against Baylor came late when Malik Murphy was playing quarterback. So they really played a clean game. That tells me they're focused, sharp, ready to go. Home, go back to the Wyoming game. They had 5 pre-snap penalties, and they just looked clumsy. I'm assuming Sark would like to see this team take that step forward and bring that road focus and attitude to the home field.
I don't play golf as much as you do, but I tend to play better when I get paired up with a stranger, because I'm trying to not like keep them back. I don't want to be embarrassed, right? I think that some of that's with when you're playing with your friends, sometimes you can be a little looser. You lose some golf balls. You're not playing as well. I think that's kind of been the thing at home for Texas. They've, some of it's the opponents as well. Rice and Wyoming are harder to get up for than Baylor and Alabama, obviously. And so maybe this week kind of changes that. They're completely locked in. I would imagine, just knowing, this is for first place. It's against another ranked team. There's so much out in front of them. But it's hard. Like these are still 18 to 22-year-old kids. Like it's human nature to look at the press, to know who you're playing against, to know Alabama is a really good team that you have to play for, to know that 60,000 Baylor fans are going to be chanting against you because this is the last time you're going into McLean. We've talked about it. This is episode 23 and a half. We've talked about it almost in every single one. The talent is all the way there. For Texas, it's just about maturity and being able to get up for these games and be mature enough to take Kansas as seriously as you take Alabama, to take home games as serious as you take away games. All of those things is something that this roster is learning in real time because they've never done it before. There's nobody on this team that has been a part of like a 12-0 team or 11-1 team. And so they're figuring out and that includes the coach, by the way. They're figuring it out on the fly. And I think each week we're starting to see more and more signs that this program is ready to handle those expectations in a way that it hasn't in a long time. Saturday is going to be another test of that.
Agreed. And look, again, credit to Kansas's defense and improvement. They last year in all 13 games, they had 12 total sacks, Mike. This year through 4, they have 11. So they're better up front. We talked about that 10-person rotation. They're they're relatively not great at linebacker. I think that's someplace where Texas can attack this team. And that, I don't think anybody's going to match up DB wise. Kobe Bryant, though, might be the best corner in the league. We thought the kid at TCU to start the year, but Kobe Bryant, not the one from Cincinnati. I had to look this up. Remember when Sauce Gardner was Cincinnati, there was a kid across the way named Kobe Bryant, who I think is also playing in the NFL now. He's Kobe, Cobee. Hey, he's the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week, so you got to watch for him. He's an outstanding player. Another one of those guys that, because it's very similar to Lance Leipold, that like Sark, they've developed their players, right? These are not, some of the guys have come in new, but they've really developed the guys they have, and that's a credit to that coaching staff. Kobe Bryant, one of those guys. When they played 2 years ago, a game all Longhorn fans like to forget, he was like 160 pounds. Right? And he's now bulked up. He's 175, 180, playing a much better brand of corner, long arm guy. But if you're Texas, you start with Jonathan Brooks here. You get Jonathan Brooks going, CJ Baxter, obviously, but Jonathan has been so hot. It feels like if you can do a good job at the line of scrimmage, he can have some advantages against those linebackers, both in the run game and the passing game here out of the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Texas, I run the ball early, I run the ball in the middle, and I run the ball late. Like, even if it doesn't work all the way up front early on, I think you keep doing it. You wear down that defensive front of Kansas. You keep them honest with their pass rush. And then in the third and fourth quarter, you start cashing in on what you put in the bank there in the first half. I think Jonathan Brooks is the guy now. I mean, it's hard to argue that he's not. I mean, unless he gets injured or has a bad game, or all of a sudden CJ Baxter is able to handle 15 carries without coming off the field, I think Brooks has to be the guy. Not even just because of his production. I think one of the things we've just seen from CJ Baxter early is he's just not physically ready to handle the pounding of college football on a snap-by-snap basis. Jonathan Brooks has been in the weight room for a couple of years, learning behind Bijan Robinson, learning behind Roschon Johnson. He's put on that armor in the weight room for a couple of years, and he's able to handle the beating. He was asked to be the whole plane at Hallettsville, right? Like, he was the star running back. He was the star defensive player. He was their best special teams player. Like, he's used to that beating. He's used to that pounding. And so I think this is going to be another big game for Jonathan Brooks. What I'm curious about, I think one of the cooler kind of little in the game matchups here is if you're Kansas and you have a Kobe Bryant who can be an elite one-on-one defensive kind of stopper to play 10-on-10, do you put him on Xavier Worthy, or do you put him on like an A.D. Mitchell, take away A.D. Mitchell in theory, and then double team Worthy, knowing you're probably going to have to double team him regardless? I think that's going to be kind of a game within a game. Like, where do they put Bryant? Do they shadow him with Worthy? Do they just put him on one side of the field, and how they adjust on top of that? Because if Texas can win that matchup, right? If Kansas decides, hey, we're going to put Kobe Bryant on Xavier Worthy and we're going to try to play 10 on 10, and Xavier Worthy still wins that matchup, Texas win by 30, right? Like they're going to win by a lot of points. And so I'm curious to see where they deploy Bryant, who he covers, and kind of what their strategy is in the secondary, because I haven't seen anybody yet figure out a way to deal with all these weapons. I don't know if there is a way to deal with all these weapons if the running game is also working.
Our Eyes on Texas multicast, a game of preview on this Friday. Appreciate you tuning in, or maybe Saturday morning you're taking this in. Again, this look at the Texas offense against the Kansas defense brought to you by thetexasmortgageguy.com. Carlos Carrion, I love your point about, how did because again, we've talked about the Jatavion problem dilemma that he creates for everybody. I love the fact that, they can be in 6 offensive line packages, spread formations, 2 backs, 1 back, whatever. But Jatavion Sanders is the fulcrum, right? He never leaves the field. He's the guy you got to deal with in all of those formations. And, you said this all season so far, and you just said it last week or in our previous episode. He's the problem, right? He is the key. He unlocks this offense, I think is the way you put it. I think that's right. And until someone finds something that they can do with him, I continue to think JT is going to continue to have just big games.
I would suggest that Texas fans close their eyes and think of the tight ends that they've had in the past. And you could almost tell based on what tight end was on the field, what Texas was going to do, because they had a tight end that was a run blocking guy. And so when he was out there, they were going to run the football. They had a tight end that was more of a pass catcher. So when he was out there, they were going to throw the football. That's what defensive coordinators are looking for. That's what all those analysts in the box are doing is telling personnel, calling down to the defensive coordinator, hey, the tight end that's in when they run the ball 90% of the time is in there. Put some big guys in there. You can't do that against Texas with JT Sanders. Like, he gets to be out there all the time, and you have no idea if Texas is going to be in 21 personnel and run the football down your throat, if they're going to go 4 wide receiver and have JT lined up as a normal tight end, if they're going to split. Like, you don't know what Texas is going to do based off of personnel. You combine that with their talent, and you combine that with Sark's ability to play call and scheme stuff up. I mean, it's dangerous, man. Like, that Texas offense, I would imagine, is one of the tougher ones to game plan for in the nation.
No question about it. And I think he, as we've said, makes it the difference. And the lines of scrimmage, even better this year than last year for Texas. And he adds to that. Such a problem for, when Malik Agbo comes in that 6 package, that's something I think the Longhorns could really feast on. And let's also remember, this is a 2:30 game. It's on ABC. It's going to be hot. I mean, we're still just into October here, end of September. It's going to be in the 90s, heat index over 100. Texas should have the depth advantage too. We talked about that on defense. I think offense as well. Longhorns should be able to wear this team down. That's where I think you said it right. If the Longhorns can weather that early Kansas script and get their own offense cranking, it could be a long day for the Jayhawks. But if the Jayhawks hit some big plays early, get themselves in this game, could be in for a ball game. I would say one thing about Quinn Ewers. Here we are, 30 minutes into our episode and haven't mentioned the quarterback, but Quinn's having a really solid year. I think you're one of the few people I heard early in the year, even in the preview season, talking about he doesn't have to be, All-American. He's got to be a good player. He's got to be a good player for Texas. And then, because he's now the question around Austin is he a game manager? Because people have a strong opinion about the Texas quarterback, regardless, and certainly this one, overrated, underrated, hype, whatnot. But he does, it's like Mac Jones when Sark was at Alabama with all that talent. He's just got to execute the play, not turn the football over. And I could argue what you're seeing from Quinn is a higher level of Mac Jones. He's just he's more inexperienced than Mac was at Alabama, but he's got the better arm, a little better an athlete, as we're seeing him running for touchdowns. Quinn Ewers just has to keep doing what he's doing and not turn the football over. Texas is going to be fine.
Never underestimate a Texas fan's ability to nitpick success, right? Like, they just always kind of seem a little miserable. I think when you come in as a 5-star talent and you come in with one of, like the guy before you that was rated as high as you was Trevor Lawrence, right? And so, like, that's kind of the marking stick. That's what Texas fans were getting. And I think we're starting to figure out that he's not that. Like, he's not surefire #1 draft pick, best quarterback that you've seen generationally. That's not who Quinn Ewers is. But that's okay. He doesn't need to be that. That's why you have Xavier Worthy. That's why you have Adonai Mitchell. That's why you have a JT Sanders. Like, his job is to get the ball into those guys' hands and then let those guys go win football games. Don't make mistakes. hit the open passes when they're supposed to, make the right play, occasionally make the shot downfield. Like that's all Texas needs. Like maybe that changes if they're playing Georgia or Michigan or something like that. And he's going to need to play bigger than that. And he's kind of proven in those big games, he's able to step up and be that guy. He's played really well in 6 quarters against Alabama, for example. He played really well against Oklahoma, for example. And so I think in these kind of games where the talent matchup is so on the side of Texas, that Sark is probably putting together a game plan and talking to Ewers about that same thing. Hey, we don't need 450 yards from you. We need 295 with 2 touchdowns, run the ball a few times and don't turn it over. And we're going to win 98% of our games that way because our defense is really good and the talent around you is such to where like, I don't know if game manager is the right word. Just like, don't do dumb things. Like do what the offense is supposed to do and do what the defense is letting you do. We have more athletes. Like they're not going to be able to stop us. Like, I don't see that as a negative thing. I think that's another sign of maturity to like, know that you don't have to be superstar that's pushing it down the field every single time. Take what the defense gives you, live within your offense, go score some points, take the win and go on to the next week.
All right. That's our look at the Texas offense. What do you think the number is? Let me mention, to your point about nitpicking Texas fans, I've been doing the morning show in Austin since the late 90s. It's amazing how many people forget Vince Young at the beginning, right? They always remember Vince Young crossing the goal line on 4th and 5, but they don't remember when Vince was struggling and they wanted Chance Mock and Vince should be a receiver. Colt McCoy had to learn how to play the position. It takes time. It takes a little bit of time. That's why
Quinn's entering what is like 13th start ever or something like that.
14. Yeah, 14 now this week. And
so he's played a full season of college football now,
Yeah, he did very little. I mean, I still think, and again, he made some money, but Quinn's decision to skip his senior year, I thought that was a detriment to his development, and they're still trying to coach through that. But yeah, again, we look up at the bye week and the Longhorns, he still hasn't turned the football over. They're going to be fine. That Texas is going to win a lot of football games if he's not turning it over because his defense is really good. The weapons around him are really good. And the Longhorns have been good with the ball so far. They've also forced more turnovers this year, so they're hitting those goals too. Speaking of turnovers, Kansas did score 2 touchdowns for their defense, for their offense last week. The Kansas offense only scored 24 points in the win over BYU, but 2 defensive touchdowns, or a touchdown that was scored, but then one set up by the defense. So the Jayhawks are a bit of ball hawks this year, and the Longhorns need to be aware of that. They've been really sharp with the ball so far this year.
Catch your punts.
Catch your punts. Well, that's our next phase. Let's shift from offense, defense, and now to special teams. And that's going to be brought to you by our friends at One Source Gas. 12 years in the business. The One Source Gas, ATX.com. They're your one-stop shop for all compressed gas needs, supplying CO2, nitrogen, helium, oxygen for various industries. Obviously, big in Austin and Central Texas and beyond would be the service industry, bars and restaurants. And you need that CO2 for your bar taps and all you're doing. You're a one-stop shop. Also for veterinaries and medical for the other gases you need. One Source Gas of Central Texas is your source every single time. Locally owned. Richard and his team are great people. Find them online. You need to upgrade. That's why they've grown like they have, because they've taken so much business from the competition because they're just better. They deliver on time. They're there for you every time. You can't do your job. You can't run your business without the gases you need, and it's going to be there on time. It's One Source Gas, ATX.com. That's One Source Gas, ATX.com. Easy website. Give them a call. See them at One Source Gas. All right, special teams. That was the big negative of last week. Something tells me X-Man's gonna do something this week. It seems like every time he gets kind of hears the rabbles, dropped the punt last week, and he's off to a great start to his season. He's having I kind of feel like he's been a shoestring tackle or two away from a couple of big punt returns. This might be the week that he takes one to the house, as they say, Craven.
Yeah, he's going to bust one eventually. And if that starts becoming kind of a strength of the team, I mean, the offense has been a strength, the defense has been a strength. We'll call the special teams kind of breaking even. If that becomes a strength as well, if that becomes an advantage in these matchups, there's not many weak spots for Texas. Last week, Baylor's best play was punting the ball to Texas and hoping they dropped it. And so like what we were talking about with Quinn Ewers, you just can't shoot yourself in the foot. Like the Texas's only opponent in a lot of these games is Texas. Like this comes down to like, if Texas does what it's supposed to, can you do what you're supposed to do offensively? Can you make tackles defensively? Can you be sharp special teams wise? Get a couple big plays there. If they can keep making their field goals, if they can clean up some of the mistakes in the return game and then turn that into an advantage, they're really good because the coverage teams are great. Like, we saw the Trey Wisner hit last week against Baylor. Like they have so many young athletes on this team just chomping at the bit to get on the field. And they seem to have really bought into Jeff Banks and just like earning it through special teams and being a superstar there. So I think they're going to have one of the better coverage units in the country week in and week out because of their talent. If Worthy can start breaking a few on the punt returns or get a couple kick returns to midfield, like all of a sudden we're talking about a Texas team that's as good as there's been this century.
Yeah, all three phases, and that's what they want to be. That's something we always talked about. Nick Saban teams at Alabama when Sark was there, even before. You got to beat them all three phases for all four quarters, and I think that's the next step for Texas. I think we're seeing what they can be round into form. They got to be a four-quarter football team, though. Baylor was as close to it as because they didn't need to play much in the fourth quarter, put Malik Murphy in and dominated that game. But it's impressive, especially I'm going to go ahead and predict it on here on the Eyes on Texas. I think X-Man takes one to the house this week. I think he's going to get one after they force a punt. Could be a game-changing kind of play for the Longhorns. It just feels like he's ready. And again, when he kind of hears the rabble of the crowd, he tends to step up and make a big play, shut everybody up, which is good. But catch him. You mentioned some of the young guys, Jonte Cook on special teams. We could see him, either X-Man takes one or Keelan Robinson's going to get to one of those block punts, right? He's going to get one that flips the field, that old dreaded double thud that all coaches hate when your kick gets blocked. I think there could be an impactful play here against the Kansas Jayhawks. But the Longhorns have been solid. You mentioned Bert Auburn kicking field goals. He's been rock solid. I think he missed one all year. Ryan Sanborn, quietly the Stanford transfer. He's been outstanding punting and delivering field position. So I think you feel really good about the Longhorn special teams if they can catch the ball. Now, Sark did cover X-Man a little bit, saying that the wind was blowing and it was kind of a knuckleball and he let it get to his body. They worked on that. I feel pretty good about X-Man in this game coming up. And I just love the way Sark, even on the offensive side, uses X-Man to force double coverages, right? It's hard to double anybody, but almost the way he schemes X, for you in Alabama got to where, man, we have to. I mean, they're putting him so many places. We need a second person, and then that's when JT jumps up. That's when AD Mitchell jumps up. I mean, that's the dynamics. But I also think we could see X on this special teams. That's brought to you by One Source Gas at OneSourceGasATX.com. OneSourceGasATX.com. Appreciate it. Also, our entire multicast brought to you by our friends at and powered by Grande Equipment. Hey, Mike. Final prediction on this, and we'll talk some big picture college football for the week and let everybody get going. But give me your thoughts on the score prediction you're kind of seeing in your crystal ball here.
Yeah, I like it around the line. I think it's going to be kind of a 41-24 game. And maybe going into halftime, Texas is only up 3 to 7 points. And then they just start leaning on Kansas. And eventually, due to the weather, due to the depth and just the talent at Texas, they break through in the second half. That's kind of where I sit going into this game. I think Kansas is going to play well in the first quarter. I don't think this is going to be one where Texas is just able to take the ball and go hide like they did against Baylor. I think they're going to have to play 4 quarters, and that's good. That's good for this football team ahead of Oklahoma to be tested in that way.
I agree with you. You just took the words out of my mouth as I was listening to you. That would be great for Texas. I know Texas fans would prefer not to be in a dogfight, and the Texas gambling fans would like to cover, and maybe they will. Yeah. But, it'd be good to get in a dogfight again. You handled it against Alabama. This is a legitimate top 20 team in my mind. I've watched Kansas, watching the film. They're going to, if they stay healthy, because their depth is still not where Lance Leipold would want it. They're going to win a lot of games this year. They're a good team in the Big 12. This is no fluke what they've done for the first 4, to be 60% on third downs, to be that proficient and now improved on defense. You can't really say enough about the job Lance Leipold has done. Can you think of another coach who's done such a good job as quickly as he has around? I mean, what he took over from Les Miles was a complete mess, and now they're a contender for double-digit wins if they can stay healthy.
I think the only real advantage that Kansas has is their head coach, and that's not a knock on Sark. I think that's just how much I enjoy and think of Lance Leipold. I think he would be a great choice to be the Michigan State head coach, for example, if he wants to move up and kind of have a bigger budget to go do that stuff. I think he's one of the top 5 coaches in college football, not just in the FBS level, all the way down. He's a tremendous coach. That's why I think Kansas has a chance to make this one a game. If you look at the rosters, Texas is absolutely 20 points better than this Jayhawks team, maybe even more than that. But they have a really good coaching staff. They play really hard. They definitely play for that staff and that coach. And so I think Kansas is going to be fired up. They were probably embarrassed what happened last year, just like Texas was in 2021, right? Like, I think Kansas probably felt like they got pantsed a little bit in this game by Texas. They weren't physical enough. They didn't answer the bell there at home. So I'd imagine this is a pretty motivated Jayhawk team that's going to have a great game plan because they have a great head coach.
All right, so that's Texas. I agree with your score prediction. I think I wrote down 42-24 Texas in this game. So I think we're right around the same. If Texas defense, plays like they did it close to against Baylor, I don't know if 24 is possible for Kansas, but they do score a lot of points. That's where that line. I'm with you. I think the line is going to be flipping back and forth. They're pretty good at this Vegas, what they're doing. And Longhorn fans, we've seen that in every game. Baylor was not close. They covered that easily. And that was the one I said, love Texas, and the line's not big enough. And the other ones I was a little bit tenuous. This one is too. All right, around the Big 12, as we look at is it fair to say the other biggest game is West Virginia TCU? When you look at it's probably kind of off the radar, but people, West Virginia lost early, bad to Penn State, a top 10 team. TCU lost that embarrassing game to Colorado, but neither has lost since. And the winner in Amon Carter Stadium Saturday night will be all of a sudden unbeaten in conference. They'll be 4-1, and kind of the team to talk about, not Texas, if the Longhorns win.
Yeah, I think we all kind of turned the page on TCU, myself included, after that week 1 win at Colorado, and turned out that Colorado is not that bad of a football team. And maybe week 1 was the toughest time to play Colorado because you had no idea, what they were going to be, good, bad, or indifferent. And so I think they just got kind of surprised week 1, kind of slept walk into that thing, didn't take them as seriously. They're starting to turn the corner and play really good football. I think they're going to be, outside of Kansas State and Oklahoma, I think number 4 in my mind would be TCU, with Kansas kind of right there in that tier. So I think that they're going to be formidable down the stretch because their quarterback's starting to play well. Chandler Morris is starting to really play well over the last couple of weeks. The one I'm intrigued about, this is probably just my state of Texas brain, but Texas Tech at home against Houston. Everybody had higher expectations for the Red Raiders than what they've shown so far. They've been really bad on the road for Joey McGuire during his tenure there, but they've been really good at home. And this one's at home. Baron Morton's going to get his first start of the year because Tyler Shuck's out the rest of the way because he broke his fibula. And so we'll see kind of what the Red Raiders are going to be the rest of the year in that week. And so I think that one's going to be a weird one as well, because like Houston's quarterback was Texas Tech's quarterback last year. Like Tech beat Houston in double overtime in 2022 with Donovan Smith as the quarterback. Now Donovan Smith is Houston's quarterback and he's going back into Lubbock. I think it's just one of those weird transfer portal stories that intrigues me.
Yeah, that's good. And of course, they played head-to-head last couple of years. Now it's a conference game. Also, Iowa State, we mentioned 6:00 at Norman against Oklahoma, ahead of the Red River game. Baylor, man, we've talked about, when you looked at the schedule, Baylor could be in for a 1-5 start for Dave Aranda. They're going to UCF to play Central Florida and Gus Malzahn. Cincinnati's at BYU. What do you make of down at A&M? I know just around the state, as you cover at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, the injury to Connor Weigman, it's a big one. I actually texted you on Tuesday or Wednesday, say I'm hearing that that injury might be season ending, and it is. It's a foot bone break in his foot. Tough for the young guy, but Max Johnson is there, but a big blow anytime you lose your starting quarterback in that conference.
That's the 3rd straight season Texas A&M has lost their preferred starter to a season-ending injury by week 6. They've just had a really hard time protecting quarterbacks. Kellen Mond, was under fire a lot at Texas A&M by their fan base, even by their coaching staff in a lot of ways. But he was consistent, and you could count on him playing every single week. And 2020 was a great year for them. And since then, they just have had no consistency at the quarterback position. I think Max Johnson is fine. I think it's a lot like Texas, where A&M has built a roster to where they're super talented at wide receiver. They have decent running backs. Their offensive line's pretty good. Their defense is so talented that I'm not sure my upside for A&M was 8-4, maybe 9-3. I think even with Max Johnson, my upside is 8-4, 9-3. He beat Arkansas last year when he started against the Razorbacks. And so, I think A&M, I think they're going to struggle. I think they're going to lose some football games, but I don't think it'll be because of the quarterback position. I just feel bad for Weigman. You work your way back from an injury, you get out there, you're playing so well. I think he was, 1A or 1B in the SEC quarterback power rankings, for me, going into week 5. And so to have that injury, just stinks for him. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Max Johnson is good enough to beat, say a Tennessee on the road, but I don't know if A&M was good enough to beat Tennessee on the road anyway. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that goes about. Jimbo, I think he needs 8 wins. He may even need 9. And we'll see if kind of this loss at quarterback maybe changes that expectations for him.
Yeah, Aggies are playing Arkansas, that annual game up at Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium, ahead of the Cowboys game with the Patriots the following day. So it'll be busy in Arlington this weekend. Aggies in Arkansas, the 11 a.m. kick. Also in that SEC where the Longhorns are headed, Georgia's at Auburn in a good one, or could be a good one. But, Georgia's 4-0. That's that old rivalry there, Auburn, Georgia in the Southeastern Conference. And then the best game in the SEC is LSU Ole Miss from the Grove. LSU 3-1, Ole Miss 3-1. So we're looking at that. And outside of that, the Colorado game with USC will get a lot of hype, a lot of national notoriety. Apparently, there's some Longhorn fans fired up. That looks like Matthew McConaughey is supposed to be on the sidelines and not doing his Minister of Culture things. Here we had some listeners not real happy about that. But,
there's more cameras. There's more cameras at that Boulder game. I can tell you, I am not a Matthew McConaughey guy, so this is going to sound like hate. But that dude is more attracted to cameras than he is burnt orange. That is no doubt for sure.
Well, he's pretty attractive too, so the camera likes him. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair.
I'd also say that somebody on our show this morning said he's a minister. He's just spreading, as long as he's doing the hook 'em and spreading the good love and doing the barnstorm for Texas, and he knows that's where all the eyes are going to be. Talk Texas when you get there. That'd be a good thing. But he wants to hang out with Dion like everybody else. USC Colorado. That's the 11 a.m. game. So it'll be a really early start for those teams on West Coast time kind of thing. But you do it for television because that's the big noon Fox ball game. They're going to put Dion there whenever they can. Texas and Kansas is a ranked matchup. We mentioned LSU, Ole Miss. How about college game day at Duke? Notre Dame, after that embarrassing end and tough end against Ohio State, they're going to go play Mike Elko's Duke team. And I've said a lot on our show, and probably not on this multicast, but I think A&M hadn't been the same since Mike Elko left. Now that defense, they were so good on defense when he was there. Now Duke is ranked number 17 in the country, and they get the Fighting Irish with a game day spotlight. That's pretty cool for them.
There are a lot of Aggies that wish Jimbo Fisher left and Mike Elko stayed when that went down. And I would imagine when this Jimbo Fisher era ends, because I don't think it's an if, it's a win. When that Jimbo Fisher era ends, either after 23 or after 24, I think Mike Elko is going to be on the very short list to replace Jimbo in College Station. He's a hell of a football coach. And you're right. They have not been the same. And it's not even just their defense. I just don't think they've been the same culturally since he left. He provided discipline and toughness to that locker room that they clearly miss.
If Marcus Freeman keeps losing games like he did the other night, Notre Dame might call him because that's where he was before he was at A&M. And they liked him a lot too, as Jimbo built his first staff. All right, Mike. Well, any big picks this week? We both like Texas. Oklahoma, it's going to be an undefeated Red River game, I think, next week. But any other favorite picks of yours before we sign off?
No, I think that's I think I like Texas State -5.5 against Southern Miss. I'm a G5 better. I think a lot of bettors pay attention to the P5, like the big games, but so does the public. You can really find you some wins there at the G5 level because not as many people are paying attention to. You can kind of fade the public there. I think Texas State on the road hasn't been very good in history, but they've really turned the corner under GJ Kinney. I would hammer the Bobcats right now. They're on a roll.
How about them?
There's only 4 teams in the state with 3 or more wins through 4 weeks, and it's Texas, TCU, Texas A&M, and the Texas State Bobcats.
Yep, and they're at 35 unanswered points last week against Nevada to win that ball game after falling behind early. All right, Mike, great stuff. Thanks again to our founding partners and presenting partner at Grande Equipment. Of course, also our founding partners, Carlos Carrion, thetexasmortgageguy.com. Find him at that great website, thetexasmortgageguy.com. Hayes City Store and Ice House in Driftwood, Texas, my favorite restaurant in the world. Hope to get out there at some point this weekend, maybe a little bit Sunday, watch those Cowboys. Hayes City Store and Ice House in Driftwood. Check out that Scratch Texas comfort food menu online at HayesCityStoreTX.com. That's HayesCityStoreTX.com. Also, One Source Gas of Central Texas, Dr. Greg Eckert, and for my teeth and smile and his Brain Vault technology, more than a mouthpiece. It's an orthotic that allows your young athlete to play hard but play safe. And we are powered every week, bi-weekly now, by our presenting sponsor at Grande Equipment, locally owned, independent, but worldwide equipment company serving heavy equipment needs, any equipment needs since 2004, online at grandeequipment.com. Mike, have a great weekend. Enjoy the Sam Houston State game, Texas and Kansas. We'll have a full update on Monday into our Tuesday cast that'll drop. It's the multicast that keeps you on top of all things Texas football. Available to watch weekly on the Dave Campbell's and the Horn in Austin YouTube pages or channels. Also available for the download through the iTunes and Spotify or wherever you find your favorite podcast. Have a great weekend. Hook 'em horns.